They buried me in 1944, got the letter, held the funeral. My mother cried holding my photo. My father didn't speak for 3 days. The world moved on thinking I died in the war, but 3 years later, I knocked on my own front door, and when my mother opened it, she dropped to her knees, because no one was ready to see the dead come back, not even me. Before I tell you how it all happened, tell me this. Where in the world are you watching this from right now? The letter came on a cold afternoon, one of those days where the wind cuts through your bones and the silence inside the house weighs more than the world itself. It said I was dead, that the Army regretted to inform that Private James Franklin Holloway, serial number 307582, had gone missing in action and, due to the circumstances, was presumed dead. My parents received that letter like a death sentence. My father dropped it on the table without saying a word, frozen, staring at the floor. And my mother, she cried quietly, hands over her face, like she was trying to hold the pain inside and not let it spill out. They held a symbolic funeral. A photo of me, too young for war, too old to return to school, surrounded by white flowers and a folded flag in a box with nothing inside. But I was alive, breathing, injured, yes, but alive, alone, out in the woods, my body in pain, my leg useless, and my head full of sounds that still echo every time I close my eyes. I remember that day like it just happened. It was late November, 1944. I had just turned 19. We were on a mission near the Belgian border, in the Ardennes region. Our unit got ambushed. Everything happened fast. An explosion launched us into the air. When I hit the ground, all I could hear was a high-pitched ringing. I couldn't hear anything else. Just the taste of blood in my mouth and that sound, like it came from inside my own soul. I'm James Holloway, born in 1925 in a small, forgotten town called Ava, Missouri, son of a tough farmer and a seamstress with steady hands and a soft heart. I grew up between fields and chickens, my knees always dirty and my dreams always bigger than our family's wallet. When the war broke out, I was still a kid, but it didn't take long for me to lie about my age and enlist. Everybody wanted to fight. It felt like being a man depended on it, and I wanted to be more than just Mr. Holloway's boy from the farm. I wanted to be part of something bigger. I wanted to prove I was worth something. They put me in the 101st Airborne Division, 501st Parachute Infantry Regiment, training at Camp Toccoa, then Fort Benning. Climbing mountains with packs on our backs, running until your lungs gave out, learning to shoot to survive on nothing, and to trust the guy beside you without question. I remember Sergeant Lewis saying, "You either learn how to fall, or end up a hole in the ground." The first time I jumped from a plane was pure terror. I prayed the entire way down. When I hit the ground, I hugged the mud like it was my mother. That's when life really began. When you jump out of that plane, you're not a boy anymore. You're just someone trying not to die. Then came D-Day, June 6th, 1944. We were in the plane in the middle of the night, praying, puking, staring into the dark, listening to the explosions below. When the light turned green, we jumped. I remember the roar of the wind, the tracers shooting up, the parachute yanking my body so hard I thought my ribs would snap. I landed in a field near Sainte-Mère-Église. It was dark, wet, and the sky was spitting fire, bullets everywhere. I just ran and hid, shooting at anything that moved. I saw friends go down. I saw faces I'd never see again. That night, I killed for the first time. A young German soldier, maybe my age. He raised his weapon. I was faster, and I've never slept the same since. We kept moving. Mission to mission, place to place. I saw more blood than anyone should. We laughed when we could, drank whatever we found, and cried when no one was looking. There were no good days, just days you didn't die. Until that patrol in the Ardennes, the ambush, the blast, the pain. When I woke up, my uniform was soaked in blood and mud. My right leg was frozen stiff, my ankle bent at an angle that shouldn't exist. I tried to scream, but my throat was dry. I could only groan and crawl. I found an old barn. One of those rotted, half-sunken ones, hidden behind the trees. I crawled in, knocked over some tools, and made a barricade with hay, curling up in a corner, praying no one would find me. And I stayed there for days. I lost count. I ate rat. Yes, rat. And roots. And leaves that didn't kill me. I drank rainwater running down the walls. I dug a bullet out of my ribs with a dull knife and a swig of broken bottle whiskey. I shook with pain, with fear, with cold. But the worst pain was knowing maybe no one was coming. Maybe I had died already, and my body just didn't know it yet. I kept asking myself, are they looking for me? Does anyone even know I'm still here? When a group from the Belgian resistance found me, I couldn't even stand. They carried me like a sack of potatoes, hid me in someone's house. Eventually, I was taken to an American base, but between being found and being declared alive again, took months. The army is like the war. Slow, painful, and it never looks you in the eye. Nobody fixed the letter, it stayed the truth. And me? I stayed a ghost. After I recovered, they sent me back to the States. I had no place on the front anymore. My leg couldn't run, but I could walk, I could breathe. I wanted to go home. When I finally got clearance to leave, 3 years had passed since that explosion. 3 years. No letters, no news, no updates, and on paper, I was a dead man. I remember the day I returned to Ava. Gray skies, torn pockets, wrinkled uniform. I got off the bus and walked to my parents' farm. Same fence, same tree I used to climb, same porch where my mother used to sit and sew. She was there, head down, didn't see me coming. I climbed the steps slowly. My heart was pounding harder than it ever did under fire. I knocked on the door. She stood up slowly, like she was heading to the kitchen for something. But when she opened it and saw my face, silence. A silence that lasted forever. Her hand trembled on the frame. She didn't cry, didn't scream. She just dropped to her knees and grabbed my boot like she needed to make sure I was real. Then I heard my father coming from the living room. He stopped at the door, hat in hand, hollow eyes, not sure if he was dreaming. The only thing he said was, "James?" And all I could say was, "Yes, Dad. It's me. I'm still here." That night was the first time in years I slept in a warm bed, but it was also the first of many nights staring at the ceiling, hearing echoes of the war and asking myself, why did I make it? And so many others didn't. Listen, if this story meant something to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me, which part stayed with you? And where in the world are you listening from? The door opened in the sky, and hell began right there. The wind hit us hard, cold, sharp, slicing across our faces like a blade. And down below, nothing but darkness and fire. Normandy wasn't a place on a map anymore. It was a pit of explosions, screams, and death. And us. We were just boys being pushed out of a plane in the middle of the night, with packs too heavy and a fear that didn't fit inside our chests. I was 18 years old when I jumped out of that C-47. It was the early morning of June 6, 1944. You could feel the plane vibrating beneath your boots, smell the oil, the sweat, the vomit. One guy next to me was throwing up. Another kept whispering his mother's name like a prayer. The sergeant walked down the line, slapping shoulders, yelling at us to get ready. But none of us were ready. No one ever is. The sound of anti-aircraft fire was getting louder, tracers lighting up the sky, red streaks shooting upward like angry fireworks. Every flash lit up someone's face, pale and frozen, like time had stopped just long enough for them to realize what was coming. When the green light blinked on, my legs didn't move right away. My boots felt glued to the floor, but someone behind me shoved hard and suddenly I was in the air, falling into blackness. The roar of the plane disappeared, just wind and silence, and the feeling that everything I'd ever known was far, far away. Then the chute snapped open, yanked my body up like a puppet, and it felt like it ripped my shoulders out of their sockets. I was floating, or maybe falling slow. Hard to tell. There was smoke in the air, fires burning below. You couldn't see who was who, just shapes moving, shouts, flashes. A bullet whizzed by, so close I felt the heat of it on my cheek. I watched another guy, someone from C Company, I think, get hit in the chute. He spun, tangled, fell hard. No scream, just thud. I landed in a field somewhere near Sainte-Mère-Église, harder than I thought I would. My knees buckled, rifle smashed into my ribs. Couldn't breathe for a second. The ground was wet, soaked with rain or blood, I didn't know. I stayed flat, barely breathing, trying to get my bearings. That's when I heard it. Machine gun fire. Close. Too close. I crawled into a ditch and waited, heart pounding so loud I thought it would give me away. It was chaos. Our drop was scattered all over the damn region. Nobody landed where they were supposed to. Radios were useless. Orders meant nothing. You just looked for a uniform like yours, hoped they weren't dead, and stuck together. That night, I met eyes with a guy I'd never seen before. We didn't speak. We just nodded, pointed our weapons the same way, and moved. I remember the smell. Burnt earth. Oil. Sweat. And something worse. Something metallic and sour that I later realized was blood in the mud. It gets in your nose. It stays there. I can still smell it sometimes, even now. We made it to a hedgerow by dawn. I saw my first German soldier up close there. He came around the corner too fast. I raised my M1 and fired. 3 shots, 2 hit. He dropped. Just like that. He was my age, maybe younger. I didn't even have time to think. My hands were shaking, but my arms moved like they weren't mine. I stood there staring at his body, thinking. He probably got a letter from his mother, too. Probably lied to her about how safe it was. Just like I did. We kept moving. The fighting didn't stop for days. No real sleep. Just minutes of rest in wet ditches or inside half-blown buildings. The worst part wasn't the gunfire. It was the quiet moments, when it all went still, and you didn't know if that was peace or if someone was just waiting for you to move. I saw friends die. Some I knew for months, some I'd just met. Didn't matter. You learn not to look too long, not to ask names. Just keep going. Every time someone dropped, we took what we could use. Ammo, food, notes in their pockets, and kept walking. One guy, Morales, carried a photo of his little brother in his helmet. Got shot through the head on day 2. I kept that photo in my pocket for months. Still have it. Never told his family. I didn't know how. People talk about heroism. They say things like valor and honor. But I didn't feel any of that. I felt cold, hungry, exhausted, numb. You reach a point where you're not fighting for your country anymore. You're just trying to keep the guy next to you alive, or at least make sure he doesn't die alone. By the end of that week, I was no longer the farm kid from Missouri. That version of me stayed in the plane. Or maybe he burned up in the sky. What came out of Normandy was someone else. Someone who saw too much too fast and couldn't go back to not knowing. There was one night, we were holed up in a stone farmhouse with holes in the walls and barely a roof. Rain coming in sideways. I sat on the floor, rifle across my lap, back against the wall. My boots were soaked through, socks stuck to my skin. Across from me, there was this kid, Fisher, from Maine. He was humming some tune real low, rocking back and forth. I asked him what it was. He said it was a lullaby his mom used to sing when the power went out. I didn't say anything back. I just listened. That's the only thing that kept me from breaking that night. I think that's when I understood. This wasn't going to end when the fighting stopped. This would stay with us. In the bones, in the blood, in every quiet room we sat in after the war, hearing things no one else could hear. And Normandy? Normandy was just the beginning. The snow stopped falling that morning, but the dying didn't. We were deep in the Ardennes by then. The trees stood like skeletons, black against the white, and everything was so quiet it felt wrong, like the whole forest was holding its breath. It was December 1944, cold in a way you don't forget. The kind that gets inside your bones, settles in your teeth, and doesn't leave, even when you think it has. I was with Charlie Company, dug into a frozen hillside near Bastogne. We didn't have winter gear, no proper boots, no gloves, just our wool uniforms soaked in snow and sweat turning stiff as boards. Our fingers bled from the cold, rifles jammed from the ice, every breath felt like sucking glass. I remember sitting in that foxhole with a guy named Dawson, from Indiana. Big guy, used to work on trains before the war. We took turns sleeping, which really meant sitting with your chin to your chest, trying not to freeze. He kept humming the same tune over and over. Swing low, sweet chariot, real soft. Like he was trying to call someone home. I never asked why. The Germans hit us at dawn. Artillery first, loud, heavy, the kind you feel in your chest. Then came the tanks, panzer divisions pushing through the woods like giants. Trees cracked and fell around us. Shrapnel tore the sky. We scrambled, half blind, deafened, slipping on frozen mud and bodies. There was screaming, always screaming. We held the line for hours, days maybe. Time got weird out there. You'd blink, and it'd be night. Blink again, and it was snowing blood. We ran out of food, ran out of socks, ran out of things to say. That's when the silence crept in. Not the kind you notice. The kind that slowly builds in your chest until you stop laughing at jokes, until your voice gets quieter, until you forget what warm feels like. We lost half the company in 1 week. Some to bullets, some to the cold. Some just stopped waking up. There was one night, a blizzard so thick we couldn't see 2 feet ahead. The sky was white. The ground was white. The trees were ghosts. We were ordered to pull back to a ridge near Foy. Move quietly, single file, no lights. Just the crunch of snow under boots and the sound of your own heart pounding. I was near the back of the line when the shell hit. It didn't explode right away. Landed behind us, a dull thud, like something heavy falling in snow. Then, light, fire, heat. I hit the ground hard, Something ripped through my thigh, couldn't hear, couldn't move. When I opened my eyes, I was alone. Smoke, trees burning, men yelling in the distance, but far, too far. I tried to stand. My leg buckled. Crawled behind a downed tree. Laid there for what felt like hours, bleeding into the snow, watching it turn red, then pink, then ice again. That's the moment I started to realize I might not make it back. But the thing that haunted me wasn't the pain. It was the idea that no one knew I was alive, that I'd just disappear into that forest, frozen, forgotten. I remember reaching into my coat for my rations, only to find the letter from my sister. I hadn't opened it yet. It was damp, edges frozen stiff. I held it to my chest and thought, at least someone still remembers me. Then I passed out. When I came to, it was morning. The snow had stopped. The wind had died. Everything was quiet. That same terrifying quiet. I pulled myself forward, dragging the leg, one arm, then the other, inch by inch. Toward what? I didn't know. Somewhere behind the lines, I found a barn. Half collapsed. Broken roof. Just enough cover to die slow. That's where I went. It wasn't bravery. It wasn't some noble survival story. It was just the one place I could get to before I passed out again. My body was shutting down, my mind too. But even then, something inside kept whispering, stay awake. Don't sleep. Not yet. And in that cold, broken place, with my hands frostbitten, stomach empty, blood drying stiff on my leg, I started hearing voices. Not real ones. Not at first. Old voices. My mother's. My brother's. Dawson's song. Memories. Or ghosts. I don't know how many days passed. The sun came and went. Snow drifted in through the holes in the roof. I couldn't stand. Could barely breathe. I talked to the rafters just to keep my mind from going. Said my name out loud. Repeated it like a prayer. James Franklin Holloway. Private. 501st Regiment. I'm still here. I'm still here. But no one answered. And that's how it happened. That's how I became a ghost, long before they wrote the letter home. I didn't know if they were there to help me, or finish the job. The door creaked first, just a little, enough to make my chest lock up. I had drifted off, not sleep, not really, more like floating somewhere between now and gone. My eyes opened slow, dry as sand. Light poured through the broken roof above, and I could see my breath. I don't know how many days had passed. Could have been 3. Could have been 10. Time wasn't working right anymore. I couldn't reach my rifle. It was somewhere near the pile of hay I'd been crawling over, but I didn't have the strength to lift my arm. My leg, swollen, stiff, wrapped in the same filthy bandage I'd torn from my own undershirt. The bleeding had slowed. The pain hadn't. Then I saw them. 2 shadows, silhouettes in the doorway, moving careful, slow, talking low in a language I didn't understand. Not German, softer than that. One had a scarf wrapped around his mouth, eyes scanning the dark. The other carried a lantern. My first thought, partisans, civilians, resistance maybe. My second thought, maybe they shoot me anyway, just to be safe. I tried to speak, nothing came out, just a dry wheeze. The one with the lantern stepped closer. He spotted me in the corner, half buried in hay and mud, and stopped cold. We locked eyes. Mine probably looked like a dead man's. His were young, brown, full of something I hadn't seen in weeks. Hesitation. He said something. I couldn't tell what. I blinked. Then I raised one shaking hand and whispered the only word I had left. American. They didn't run. Didn't shoot. That was the first miracle. What happened next was a blur. One of them dropped to his knees beside me, pulled the scarf down. Maybe 20 years old, dark hair, thick accent. He touched my forehead, said something I still don't know. Then he shouted toward the door. Fast. Urgent. More voices came. 3? 4? Footsteps. A blanket. Hands lifting me, gently, but not without pain. I remember screaming when they touched my leg. Someone hushed me like I was a baby. I passed out before we made it to the cart. When I woke up again, I was in a cellar. The ceiling was low, damp stone walls, a wood stove in the corner barely warming the room. My leg was bandaged fresh, tight, and clean. The smell of boiled potatoes filled the air. I thought maybe I'd died after all. Or maybe they were just fattening me up for something worse. A woman entered, maybe in her 40s, face hard as leather, eyes sharp. She didn't say anything, just sat next to me and held a cup to my mouth. Broth, warm, salted. I drank. I cried. She didn't react. It took a few days before I could sit up. Even longer before they started telling me anything. They were a family. The Martels, Belgian, farmers before the war, then fighters, smugglers, resistance, though they didn't call it that. Just doing what we had to do. The man who found me, Etienne, was the oldest son. He'd seen the tracks in the snow leading to the barn. Thought maybe it was a wounded deer, or a trap. Turned out to be me. They had no idea what to do with me. If the Germans found out they were hiding an American, they'd all be killed. But they didn't throw me out. I asked once why. Etienne just said, "You looked worse than we did." There was no way to get a message out. No radio, no safe route to Allied lines. Bastogne was surrounded. Snow made movement almost impossible, so I stayed. In that cellar. For days. Then weeks. My uniform stayed hidden in a crate under the stairs. They dressed me in old clothes, too small, smelled of smoke and work. I looked like a scarecrow. Etienne shaved my head and told me if the Germans ever came, I was to pretend to be his mute cousin from Liège. I practiced saying nothing. I got good at it. I listened to them speak, learned words I didn't know. Potato, bread, quiet, danger. Learned how to tell who was afraid by the way they walked. Learned that silence can be a language all its own. One night, a German patrol came through the village, looking for supplies or defectors or something else. They knocked on every door. When they came to the Martel's house, we all froze. Etienne shoved me back into the cellar. I crouched in the dark, heart pounding, listening to boots on the floor above. A question. A laugh. Silence. Then the door shut. They were gone. I didn't sleep that night. I remember staring at the cellar ceiling, counting every breath, wondering how many more I had left. The Martels saved me. No medals, no headlines, just quiet courage. I was a burden, a risk. But they fed me, hid me, spoke to me like I was still human, even when I barely felt it. I stayed with them through the winter, watching the war from underneath the floorboards, healing slow, thinking slower. I wasn't a soldier anymore. I was something else, a ghost in borrowed clothes, a name nobody knew. The army thought I was dead, and part of me agreed with them. They asked me for my name, and didn't believe it when I said it. The front moved faster than we expected. Word came in whispers. The Americans were pushing back, the Germans retreating. One morning, Etienne came down to the cellar, face pale, and said only, "It's time." I didn't ask what he meant. I just nodded. He gave me a coat that didn't fit and a walking stick he'd carved himself. I couldn't walk more than a mile without collapsing, but I was better than I'd been, alive, or close enough to it. We left before sunrise. No horses, no noise, just boots on ice and breath hanging in the air. Etienne knew the woods better than anyone. We didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. We walked for hours. My legs screamed with every step. But I kept going. I don't know if it was hope or guilt that pulled me forward. Maybe both. We reached a road, muddy, torn up by tank tracks and boots. Empty for now. Etienne told me to wait. He disappeared into the trees and came back an hour later, out of breath, grinning. "Americans," he said, pointing down the road. "Maybe yours." I limped toward them like a man in a dream. A small patrol. Dirty faces, rifles slung low. One of them saw me first, raised his weapon. I froze. "Hold it!" the soldier shouted. "Identify yourself." "My name is James Holloway," I said, or tried to. My voice cracked. "Private, 101st Airborne, 501st. He frowned, looked me up and down. I must have looked like a scarecrow, filthy, half-starved, in a Belgian coat and mismatched boots. "You got ID?" I shook my head. "Lost everything." He motioned to another soldier. They surrounded me. One pulled a notepad. "You say Holloway? From where?" "Missouri." He paused. "You sure about that?" I laughed. Or maybe it was something else. "I'm sure." They brought me to a field hospital set up near a small village church. A young medic checked my pulse and called for a stretcher. Someone wrote my name on a clipboard. They didn't recognize it, not right away. I asked them to send a message. To HQ, to the 101st, to anyone who had a list of the dead. "Check it," I told them. "I'm on it." They did. And that's when things got strange. I was listed KIA, killed in action. Confirmed. Body unrecovered, presumed destroyed. The army had sent a letter. My parents had held a funeral. My name was carved on a memorial stone back in Ava. I told them the whole story. Ardennes, the ambush, the barn, the Martels, the cellar, the silence. They nodded, took notes, but they didn't look at me the same. One officer said, "You're going to need to verify this." "Verify what?" That you're… you. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just asked for paper. I wrote a letter to my father, then to the base clerk I knew in England, Thomas from Ohio, who owed me $5 and could confirm I wasn't a ghost. Then I waited. The army doesn't move quickly, not even when the dead walk in through the door. They kept me in the hospital, gave me clean sheets, a new uniform, and a blank stare. No rank, no ID, just unknown male, claims prior enlistment. Days passed. Weeks, maybe. I was fed. I slept. I tried to remember how to be someone, but I didn't feel rescued. I felt displaced, like I was standing in my own shadow. The worst part wasn't being forgotten. It was realizing I didn't know who I was coming back as. Other soldiers passed through, some missing limbs, some with eyes that stared too far. They'd nod at me, sometimes sit and talk, but I never told them my story. Not all of it. They wouldn't believe me. I barely believed me. One night, a chaplain sat beside my cot. Quiet guy. Asked if I wanted to talk. I shook my head. He stayed anyway. I heard you came back from the dead, he said finally. I think part of me didn't. He didn't argue, just patted my shoulder and left. Eventually, word came. Letters had been received. My father confirmed it. So did the unit clerk. A copy of my dog tag records surfaced, faded but readable. Someone at HQ made a call. They updated the paperwork. I was alive again. Officially. They handed me a temporary ID, a reassigned status. Survivor, combat fatigue, non-active duty. They didn't say welcome back. They didn't ask how I made it. They just put me in line for the next transport heading west. I stood in front of the house, and no one knew what to do. It was early spring when I got back. Missouri was muddy and quiet, with that kind of soft wind that makes old porch swings creak even when no one's sitting in them. The trees were just starting to bud again. Everything looked smaller, quieter. The war had torn through half a continent, and somehow this place hadn't changed at all. But I had. The bus dropped me off a mile from the farm. Driver didn't ask questions, just looked at me like I wasn't fully there. He was right. I walked the rest of the way. Took me longer than it should have. The legs still stiff. Every step like walking through water. My boots didn't match. One was army issue, the other a Belgian leather thing Etienne gave me before I left. I still wore the coat too. Couldn't let it go. As I came up the dirt road, I saw the old mailbox. Bent post, paint chipped. Same crooked Holloway my dad carved into the side years ago. I ran my hand across it like I was touching a grave. Then the house, same porch, same swing, same white siding faded by the sun. A curtain moved in the window. I froze. The last time they saw me, I was walking away in full uniform, clean shave, a lie in my voice. I'll be back soon. And then, nothing. A letter, a funeral, a flag folded on the mantel, and silence. Now I was back, but not really. The door opened. My mother stepped out, holding a dish towel. She looked thinner, older. Her eyes met mine. And for a long second, she didn't move, just stared. Then her hands went to her mouth. She whispered my name like she wasn't sure it would work. James? I nodded. I couldn't speak. She walked toward me slowly. One step, then another. The towel dropped. Her knees gave out just as she reached me. I caught her before she hit the ground. We stood there shaking, arms wrapped around each other. She didn't cry. Neither did I. We just held on like the wind might take one of us away again. My father came out next. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at me like I was something out of a dream he wasn't ready to wake from. His face didn't change, but I saw it in his eyes. He didn't know what to say to a son who'd already died. We sat in the living room later that night. The same room they'd held the memorial in, the same fireplace, the same rug. I noticed my photo still on the shelf, a black ribbon tied around the frame. I didn't touch it. They made dinner, but I couldn't eat much. The smells, roast chicken, potatoes, onions, all familiar. All wrong. My stomach had gotten used to less. My mind, too. My sister came the next day. She walked in, saw me, and started laughing, then crying, then both. She said, "You don't look like you." I said, "Neither do you." They asked questions. I gave short answers, not because I was hiding anything, but because I didn't know how to say it. How do you explain the sound of snow turning red? How do you explain the way silence can scream? How do you explain living in a cellar where no one says your name for months, not because they forgot it, but because it was safer that way? I slept in my old bed that night. Springs creaked like always. Ceiling had a new crack in it. I stared at it for hours. I didn't dream. The days passed. Neighbors came by. Word spread fast. James is alive. Some brought pies. Some just stared. I heard someone say at church, "It's a miracle." I didn't feel like one. People asked what it was like. "The war," they meant. I told them it was cold. That was the only answer that felt honest. Cold in the ground. Cold in the heart. Cold in the eyes of a friend when he knows he won't make it through the night. I went to town a few times. Folks didn't recognize me right away. I had to tell them who I was. They'd go quiet. One man, Mr. Travis the barber, reached out and touched my shoulder like I might vanish if he didn't. I didn't feel real to them. Truth is, I didn't feel real to me either. There was one day I stood in front of my father's truck, holding a wrench, trying to help him fix something under the hood. I dropped it. My hand wouldn't stop shaking. He looked at me, not angry, just sad. "You don't have to," he said. I nodded, but I still picked the wrench up. The worst moment came a week later. My mother was cleaning out a drawer and found the original letter, the one from the army, the one that said I was gone. She held it like it still had weight, like the paper hadn't forgiven us yet. "I never believed it," she said, but she had. I saw it in her eyes, and I didn't blame her. I started taking long walks, just to be alone, out by the edge of the cornfield, down to the creek. I'd sit and listen to the water, sometimes for hours, not thinking, just sitting, still. I didn't know how to be back, how to fit inside a life that had already grieved me, how to fill the space that had already closed without me in it. Being dead had been simple. It was quiet. Coming back? That was harder. I didn't miss the war, but I missed the ones who didn't make it back. People think coming home means peace, that the fighting stops when the gunfire does. But that's not how it works. You come home and everything's where you left it, the porch swing, the cracked window by the sink, the way the hallway creaks at night. But none of it fits the way it used to. It's like trying to wear someone else's clothes. They're yours, but they're not. A month after I got back, I was sitting on the edge of the bed, watching my hands shake. No reason, just shaking. My mother came in to bring laundry. She didn't say anything about it. She just set the pile down, touched my shoulder, and left. That's how things were now. Quiet. Careful. I wasn't working yet. Wasn't doing much of anything. Couldn't stay asleep. Couldn't sit still. Couldn't talk about it. So I walked. Every day. Out past the edge of the farm. Down the same dirt road I used to take to school as a boy. Past the tree line where I used to sneak out to smoke my first stolen cigarettes. I walked until my leg gave out. Then I sat. Then I walked back. One morning, I found myself at the old train tracks, the ones that hadn't run since before the war, just rusted rails and weeds now. I sat on the edge, listened to the wind, and started whispering names out loud. Dawson, Fisher, Morales, Elliott, Carter. Some of them had died in front of me, some had just gone silent and never came back. One or two I never knew well, but I remembered their laugh, or the way they folded letters from home like they were sacred. I didn't know why I did it. Maybe to make sure someone still said their names. Maybe to remind myself they'd been real. There was guilt. Always. I didn't talk about it. Didn't even let it show. But it was there, like an ache in the chest you get used to carrying. I kept asking myself the same question every night. Why me? Why was I the one who got pulled out of that barn? Why did Etienne find my footprints and not someone else's? Why did I survive when better men didn't? I wasn't braver, I wasn't stronger, I was just lucky. And that kind of luck, it doesn't feel like a blessing. It feels like a burden. I started avoiding people. Church, stores, neighbors. They all meant well, but they didn't know what to say. They'd nod, smile, call me the miracle boy. Some even said I must have a purpose, something special, something big. I wanted to yell at them. I didn't come back with answers. I came back with holes. There were flashes, too. Not big ones, just moments. I'd be standing in the barn helping my father carry feed, and suddenly I'd hear the sound of artillery, just for a second. Or I'd smell diesel fuel on the road and feel my stomach turn. Once, I saw a kid throw a rock and duck behind a tree, and for half a second, my body dropped to the ground without thinking. People don't see it. They think the war ends with medals and handshakes. But sometimes it follows you home, quiet and polite, and just sits in the corner of the room, waiting for you to close your eyes. One night, I opened the drawer by my bed and found the letter again, the one from my sister that I never read back in Belgium. The paper was still stained. The ink bled from water and time. I unfolded it slow, It wasn't long, just a few lines. She talked about the crops, the neighbor's dog, how our mother missed my jokes. She ended it with, "We're all waiting for you. Come back soon, please." I held it in my hands for a long time. I had come back, but I wasn't sure if the part of me she was waiting for had made the trip. There was one person I hadn't seen yet. Margaret. She used to live 2 farms over. We wrote letters before I left. Nothing serious, not really. Just familiar. Safe. She'd come to the funeral, I was told. Laid flowers, black dress. I hadn't spoken to her since I returned. One afternoon, I saw her across the town square. She was with her mother. Our eyes met. She gave me a soft smile. Not joy, not shock, just something quiet. And then she turned away. That was enough. I started writing again. Not to anyone. Just in a notebook I found in the attic. I wrote down things I remembered. Not the facts, not the dates. The smells, the faces, the silences. I didn't know what I'd do with it. I just needed it out of me. On the page, at least it had somewhere to go. And slowly, very slowly, I began to learn something I hadn't expected. That surviving doesn't mean you won. It means you carry. And some things, you carry forever. The first time I said it out loud, it was by accident. It had been months since I got back. Maybe more. I stopped keeping track after a while. The calendar on the wall still hung crooked, stuck on a page I hadn't flipped since April. I'd gotten good at pretending. Pretending to sleep, pretending to listen, pretending to be grateful. Most days I just stayed busy doing nothing in particular, helping my father fix fence posts, staring too long at the sky, sharpening tools that didn't need sharpening, keeping my hands moving so my mind wouldn't. The silence was easier than trying to explain. People didn't really want to know. They asked how it was over there, then flinched when I tried to answer, so I stopped trying. I let them believe whatever version of the story made them feel good. He's lucky. He's strong. He beat the odds. I didn't feel strong. I felt hollow. I kept thinking about all the men who didn't come back. Dawson, Fisher, the ones whose names I never got. And I imagined them sitting in the room with me, watching me fake a smile, watching me pass potatoes at Sunday dinner, like nothing had happened. Some nights I'd sit out in the barn alone, where it was dark and smelled like hay and oil. I liked it out there. It was the only place where I could hear myself think. Sometimes I'd hold my old boots in my hands, the ones they mailed back after I was officially alive again, still caked in dry dirt from Belgium. I couldn't bring myself to clean them. One evening, in late fall, I was helping Mr. Travis, the barber, fix his roof. He'd known me since I was a boy. He never pushed me to talk, just handed me nails and let me work. That day, I was up on the ladder, holding a loose plank, when I heard someone behind me on the ground say, "Heard you were in Bastogne." The voice didn't come from Mr. Travis. It came from a young man, maybe 17, thin, with 2 short sleeves and eyes too eager. Probably hadn't shaved more than twice in his life. I didn't answer right away. He said again, "You were there, right? The Battle of the Bulge?" I looked down at him. "Yeah," I said. He lit up. "That's wild. My uncle's in the 2nd Armored. He said it was bad, but, you survived. That's got to count for something." I almost said nothing. But something about his voice, too young to know better, too hopeful, hit me wrong. I said, "We froze. We starved. We buried our own with our bare hands." It just came out. Like a reflex. He blinked, smiled, faded. He mumbled something and walked off. Mr. Travis handed me another nail, didn't say a word. That's why I liked him. He never acted like silence needed to be filled. But that night, something cracked open. When I got home, I went up to the attic. Found the box I hadn't touched since the army sent it. Letters, a patch, a set of medals I didn't remember earning. I laid them out on the floor like pieces of someone else's life. Then I found a photo. It was our squad, what was left of it, standing near a burnt-out farmhouse, faces dirty, eyes too tired. I remembered the smell of that place before I remembered the names. I traced my finger over each man. Dawson, Morales, Jensen, Carter. Me, half smiling, holding my helmet like I thought the camera could see through me. I brought the photo downstairs. My mother was folding sheets at the table. She looked up. "What's that?" "Nothing," I said. Then I stopped. "It's Dawson," I said quietly, pointing. "He used to hum old gospel songs when it got cold. Kept me awake." She nodded, slow. "I remember the name from your letters." I sat down. She kept folding, letting me breathe. I said, He died next to me, just dropped. No sound. I didn't even notice at first. She paused, pressed a hand to her chest. I didn't cry, neither did she, but something passed between us. Not understanding. Not exactly. But permission. Like I could say more, and it would be safe. After that, I started saying their names again. Not in a whisper out by the creek. Out loud. At the dinner table. In the barn. I'd mention little things. Fisher always carried a photo of his dog in his helmet. Jensen made the worst coffee you could imagine. Morales could hit a German helmet at 300 yards. Said it was luck. I think he just liked the sound it made. Nobody stopped me. Nobody rushed me either. It didn't make things easier, but it made the weight shift. Like I wasn't carrying it alone anymore. Then came the newspaper. A man from St. Louis had heard about me. The soldier who came back from the dead. He wanted to write a story. Came out in a shiny car. Wore a hat too clean for a dirt road. Sat in our kitchen, asked questions with a pen already in motion. I didn't like the way he looked at me. Like I was a headline. He asked, what was the hardest part? I said, coming back. He blinked. Coming back from where? Exactly. The article ran 2 weeks later. My mother saved a copy. I never read it. But something odd happened after that. People stopped asking what I'd seen. They started asking what I learned. And that was harder. Because what do you say? That people die too fast and live too slowly? That silence can grow inside a man until it feels like its own voice? That surviving isn't about being strong, it's about getting lucky, and then waking up every day after with the question still burning. Why me? I didn't have the answers, still don't. But I started telling the truth, little pieces of it, to the people who could take it, and I started breathing deeper again. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I was tired of suffocating alone. And maybe that's what broke the silence in the end. Not a speech, not a confession, just one line, one name, one memory at a time. The envelope was thin, but it carried the weight of a whole winter. It arrived on a Tuesday. I was outside chopping wood. Still kept the habit, even when I didn't need the fire. Something about the rhythm helped clear the noise. The postman, Danny, son of the man who used to deliver our mail before the war, waved and handed it over like it was nothing. From overseas, he said. Belgium, looks like. Belgium. The word hit like a dull knock to the ribs. I wiped my hands and turned the envelope over. Yellowed edges, a stamp I didn't recognize. My name written in an unfamiliar hand, crooked, uneven, like the writer hadn't held a pen in a while. I didn't open it right away. I stood there with it in my hands, the axe buried in the stump, the wind moving the trees just enough to make them whisper. I sat on the porch, watched the horizon for a long time. Then I opened it. It was from Etienne, the boy who found me in the barn, the boy who saved me, though he was barely more than that, the man who risked his family's life to keep a ghost breathing under their floorboards for weeks. He was writing from Namur, said he had heard, years ago, that I'd survived, that I had made it home. He'd tried to write once before, but never knew where to send the letter. This time, someone had helped him track down an old army registry, and from there, a Missouri farm with a matching name. He said he still remembered the day he found me. You looked like death, he wrote, but you still whispered American. I never forgot that. He told me his father had passed the following spring, his mother 2 years later. The farm had changed hands. The war had taken their animals, their tools, and nearly took their lives. But they'd made it. He said he sometimes thought about that winter, about the silence, about the way I used to talk in my sleep, about the cellar. I think, he wrote, we saved each other. That line hit me hardest. He didn't ask for anything, no favors, no praise, just wanted me to know he remembered, that he was alive, that the world had gone on. I read the letter 3 times that day, and then I wept for the first time in years. It wasn't loud. It didn't come with screaming or shaking fists, just a slow, steady ache that rose from somewhere I thought had long gone dry, not just for what I'd lost, but for what I'd never said. I never thanked him. Not really. Sure, I'd tried. In broken French, with a nod, with the grip of a hand before I boarded the truck back toward the lines. But I'd never told him what it meant, what it had cost him, what it gave me. Survival is a strange thing. It stretches long, it forgets things, it rewrites what was clear in the moment. But that letter? It sharpened everything. The hay, the frost, the cellar door creaking open just enough to see light spill across the stone floor. His mother's hands, the way Etienne held the knife in the dark, not to threaten, but to protect. From who? I'm still not sure. That night, I sat at the table with a pen in my hand for hours. I didn't know what to say. I still don't. I tried a dozen openings. I never forgot. You saved me. I should have written sooner. They all felt too small. So I just started with his name. Dear Etienne, you were right. We saved each other. I told him about the farm, about the barn I still avoided, about my mother, now buried beneath the oak tree by the house, about my sister, now with a family of her own, about the quiet I still carried, and the days I still whispered names under my breath, just to make sure someone said them. I told him I kept the coat. I told him I sometimes still heard the cellar door creak in my sleep. And I told him thank you. I sent the letter a week later. Walked it into town myself. Made sure it had all the right stamps. I never got a reply. Maybe he moved again. Maybe it got lost. Maybe that one letter, his one message across time, was all that was meant to be. But it was enough. It didn't fix anything. Didn't erase what happened. But it made the weight shift just a little. It reminded me that there are pieces of ourselves scattered in the places we least expect. In cold cellars, in broken barns, in the handwriting of a man we never thought we'd hear from again. And sometimes, just sometimes, they find their way back. Surviving was the easy part. Living with it. That's what took a lifetime. I'm 96 now, almost 97, if I make it to October. Some days, I forget what I came into the room for. Some days, I still remember the smell of wet wool and diesel like it's in the air again. The world's quieter now, but not empty. Just softer, like it's learned to live with its own bruises. Most mornings, I sit in the same chair I've had for 40 years, just by the window, coffee in hand, blanket over my knees. The birds come at the same hour. The light falls through the glass in stripes. And sometimes, if the wind's right, I can hear the swing on the porch creak, even when no one's on it. The war's not something I talk about much anymore. Folks don't ask. Most who knew are gone. A few younger ones still try. Historians, students, reporters who think there's a story hiding in my old boots. They want big battles, medals, a moment of glory. I never give them that, because it's not about glory. It never was. What stays with you isn't the flags or the parades. It's not the uniform or the dates. It's the mud that soaked through your socks in Bastogne. The sound a man makes when he knows he's not going home. The way silence fills a trench deeper than any voice ever could. I didn't come back a hero. I came back quiet. For a long time, I thought maybe I shouldn't have come back at all. I didn't talk about that. Not to my mother, not to my sister, not to Margaret when we finally spoke again, years later at the feed store. She smiled. Said I still had the same eyes. I didn't know if that was a good thing. I built a life. It took time. I married, had a son, built a shed with my own hands, learned how to fix things that weren't mine and sometimes how to fix things that were. But I never got rid of the cold. You carry it with you, that thin layer of ice under the skin. You learn to live with it, laugh through it, hold your children tighter because you remember what it's like to lose people without saying goodbye. There were years when I'd wake up screaming, not often, but enough. My wife never asked. She'd just place a hand on my chest until my breathing slowed. That was enough. I didn't need words, just presence. You learn, over time, that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means making peace with the remembering. I never blamed the war for what it took. That's not what war does. It doesn't choose, it just moves. Like a storm, like fire. You're either in its path, or you're not. And if you are, you either get out or you carry the ashes. I carried the ashes. Some days heavier than others. I kept the letter from Etienne until his name faded off the envelope. Never got another. But I like to think he lived a full life. Maybe he told someone the story. Maybe he didn't. Some things are meant to stay quiet. I told my son parts of it when he got older. Not the worst parts, but enough. So he'd understand why I went still at sudden noises, or why I'd never watched war movies. He asked once if I was proud of what I did. I said no, but I was proud of what I didn't do. I didn't quit. I didn't forget the names. I didn't let the silence swallow me whole. He didn't ask again after that, just nodded. Sometimes that's all you need from a man. And now, I sit here. Bones softer, hands slower, thinking about all the things I've carried. A name, a dog tag, a coat that doesn't fit anymore, the memory of a cellar in Belgium, and the weight of a letter that came too late. I think about Dawson humming next to me in the foxhole. I think about Morales lighting a match with his teeth. I think about Fisher's helmet, with the picture of a beagle taped inside. I think about all the voices I heard in my sleep, long after I came home. Some I still hear. But I also think about that morning the snow finally melted, about the first bite of real bread in a Belgian farmhouse, about the warmth of a cup held in shaking hands, about the creak of the door when my mother saw me standing on the porch, about her saying my name like it might break. And I think about what I'd say to someone younger, someone who thinks the world is measured in victories and medals. I'd say this: you survive by inches, not miles. By the man next to you, not by the flag behind you. You survive by remembering the quiet and by learning how to live with it. You carry the names. You say them, even when no one's listening. And if you're lucky, truly lucky, someone will say yours, long after you're gone. So if you remember anything from this story, let it be this: survival isn't the end. It's the beginning of everything you have to live with. And if you're hearing my voice now, wherever you are, just know I came back. Not whole, not heroic, but I came back. And that, in the end, was enough.